Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophets Speak. Today we continue our study of the second book of Samuel. We are up to chapter 10, that is Shmuel Bet Perek Yud. This chapter is kind of the end of a section, the section which is the David HaMelech, King David's ascent to the high point of his career as a king, because in chapter 11 we begin to feel things start to unravel with some very major episodes in which David's very monarchy and role as a leader was severely called into question and almost completely took everything apart. And obviously we'll get there, but that starts in 11. So today is kind of, we've been going uphill. We're kind of at the top of the hill. And as soon as David starts acting that way, trouble begins. And we'll read that as it develops. So over here, Vahi Acharei Cain, and it was after the events that we previously mentioned, where David had fulfilled his promises to the family of Saul and the family of Jonathan, supported their remaining descendant. David had secured significant victories from the surrounding areas. He's now, for the most part, at peace. So an event occurred in a neighboring nation, the nation of Ammon. And important to note that Ammon is a culturally related nation to the people of Israel. They were neighbors. However, when the Israelites, and this is recorded in the Torah and mentioned in Deuteronomy, the verse Lo stidrosh shlomam v'tovatam, not to, and lo yavo amoni b'kal Hashem, because when the Jews were wandering through the desert, and the Israelites were wandering through the desert, they asked the people of Ammon to pass through their land peacefully in order to reach their ultimate destination, which is Israel. The people of Ammon refused to allow that, and God said, because of their behavior, not to allow the people of Ammon to intermarry with the Israelites forever, and also never to try to make peace with them, in the sense, not to try to make peace in the sense there was no command to destroy them or evict them from their land, as there was with the nations living in Canaan. However, there was a command not to create alliances with them. Lo tidrosh shlomam, do not create alliances with them. So many commentaries view what we're about to read, this episode, as David violating that command that was given directly from God, not to create alliances with them. It's not 100% clear from this chapter, and I'll show you why, that David is actually creating an alliance with them, but he's certainly trying to create peaceful relations with them, despite the fact, as we shall see, that they had no interest in making peace with Israel. So Vayimloch Chanun beno tachtav. So the king of the people of Ammon passed on, and his son Hanun was appointed as king in his stead. Vayomer David, and David said, when he heard about this event, a neighboring king passed away, he said, Es chesed im Chanun ben Nachash, I will do something kind, something good with Hanun, the son of Nachash. Nachash was the name of the prior king. Ka'asher asa aviv imadi chesed, in the same way that his father did kindness with me. It's not specified here, and it's not specified anywhere exactly what this kindness was. The rabbinic tradition has all sorts of explanations as to exactly what this kindness was, but deliberately the verse doesn't reveal what that is. One gets the sense that Ammon was peaceful with David, as opposed to many of the other surrounding neighbors, but certainly Ammon wasn't certainly peaceful all the time, but it would seem that at least for David it was that way. Regardless, he said, he did kindness with me, I am going to do kindness with him. So, in order to repay that kindness, Vayishlach David lenachamo, David sent a delegation to comfort him, to deliver his condolences, biyad avadav el aviv, through his servants. In other words, he sent a delegation of servants to console him regarding the loss of his father. Vayavo avdei David eretz bnei Ammon, and the servants of David came and arrived at the land and in the capital city of Ammon. Vayomru sarei v'nei Ammon el Chanun adonehem. However, even though they arrived for perfectly peaceful diplomatic reasons, the people of Ammon, the officers, the leaders, the leadership, they advised their king, their new king Hanun. They said, "Hamechabei David es avicha be'einecha." Do you really think that David is here, sending this delegation in order to? Is that what it appears to you, that he's coming to give honor to your father, Kishalach Menachemim, because he has sent people to console? The purpose of this delegation is really because they want to check out our city, they want to see how strong we are, and they want to figure out what our weaknesses are so that they can attack us and take us over. That's why Shalach David et Avadav. That's the real reason why David sent his servants to you. In other words, David's overtures of peace, which were meant honestly, were now being turned into a overture of war. Vayikach Hanun et avdei David, and Hanun took the servants of David. Vayigalach et chatzi zakanam, and he shaved off half of their beard. Vayichrot et madvehem, and he cut off their cloaks, their garments, bachetzi, halfway, ad shitotzehem, at their buttocks. Vayishalchem, and he sent them. So he sent them out half naked, half shaven. These were delegates of a delegation from a king to another king, and he humiliated them and sent them out into the streets, into the outdoors in a very humiliating way. Vayagidu David, and the fact that this had happened was told to David. Vayishlach likratam, and he sent people to go and greet them as they were on their way back in this state of embarrassment and shame. He sent people to greet them because they were extremely embarrassed. Vayomer hamelech shavu birecho, and the king said, "Stay here in Jericho." That would be a town that they on the way from Ammon. As they crossed the Jordan, they would have crossed and came to the town of Jericho, which would be under the dominion of David's kingdom. He said, "Stay here, but don't come to the capital, ad yitzamach zikanchem, until your beards regrow, vishavtem, and then you can return, so you don't have to return to the capital, to your positions, looking in such a shameful way." Vayiru b'nei Ammon, and the people of Ammon realized ki nevashu b'David, that what they had done had made David very angry. So, in other words, they regretted that they had provoked him. And at this point, remember, David is at the height of his military might. He had won many military victories in the area, and he was not the kind of guy you wanted to piss off. So Ammon realized that David was going to come and attack them. So they needed to get allies. So Vayishluchu v'nei Ammon vayizkeru es Aram Beit Rechov. So the Ammonites went and they hired from Ammon, from Aram, which is in Beit Rechov, yet Aram Tzova, they hired Esrim Elef Ragli, 20,000 soldiers. So they hired mercenaries, Ved Melech Macha, and from the king of the area of Macha, Elafish, they hired another 1,000, V'ish Tov, and people from the land of Tov, Shnei Maser Elafish, they hired another 12,000 men. So we have here a total of 33,000 mercenaries that Ammon hired to strengthen their own armies to defend against what they knew was an impending attack. Vayishma David, and David heard that they were assembling an army. So Vayishlach et Yoav, he sent his general Yoav, v'eit kol hatzavah giborim, and all of the strong soldiers that he had. Vayetzu b'nei Ammon, so the people of Ammon went out, and the Vayarchu milchama Pesach Hashar, and they set up their battle lines outside the gate of their capital city. Varamsova Urechov Ishtova Macha, and all of these places from all the mercenaries from all these places, Livadom Batsada, they stood in a separate place out in the field. So you have all the mercenaries out in the field, and you have the soldiers of Ammon themselves protecting the gate of the city. Vayar Yoav ki hayta elav pnei hamilchama. Yoav saw that there was arrayed against him a battlefront, mipanim umeachar, from the front of him and from behind. So blocking the way between him and the city and behind him. Vayivchar mikol b'churei Yisrael vayaroch likrat Aram. So he took a delegation. He split his soldiers in half, and he took a delegation, and half of them he placed to face the people of. So those half of the soldiers were facing Aram. Yet Yeser Aram, and the remaining half, this is verse 10 now, Natan biad Avshai achiv, he put under the command of his brother Avshai or Avishai, Vayaroch lekrat bnei Ammon, and they were facing the soldiers of Ammon who were protecting the city. So Yoav himself is facing away from the city towards all these mercenaries, and Avshai was in command of all of the soldiers that were facing Ammon. Vayomer, and he said, so in other words, we're going to be fighting on two fronts here. So he says, Im tachzak Aram mimeni, if I'm going down and the people of Aram are stronger, are beating me at battle, Yeshua, then you will be for me to save. In other words, then you can turn some of your troops in the other direction to help me. And if they are stronger than you, then I will go and help you. So this was his strategy. Obviously, if both go down, then they're in bad shape. So, and therefore, because that obvious, which didn't need to be stated, he therefore says the following verse 12, Chazak v'nit chazak ba'adamenu. Chazak, let us be strong and let us strengthen ourselves on behalf of our nation, uva'ad orei Eloheinu, and on behalf of the cities of our God. Va'adonai yaseh hatov b'einav, and then God will do what He sees fit. And this is them stating that this phrase is a phrase that is repeated and is a battle cry that gets repeated even in modern times, it's a strengthening call that Yoav said to Avishai before facing this battle on two separate fronts. So Yoav went and attacked the people of Aram, and they ran from him. So Yoav chased them off. And when Bnei Ammon saw that all of their allies from Aram were running, they started running from Abishai, and they entered the city. And Yoav left the people of Ammon and returned to Jerusalem. So they didn't press the attack. They chased the Ammonites into the city. They chased the people of Aram away. But the people of Aram escaped into the city, and they didn't press the attack by conquering and destroying the city. Vayar Aram ki nigaf lefnei Yisrael, and the people of Aram saw that they had been struck down, that they had been bested or clobbered in battle by the people of Israel. Vaye'asvu yachad. So they regathered their forces after they had obviously a messy retreat. Vayishlach Hadad Ezer, and then they sent Hadad Ezer sent for Vayotzei et Aram asher me'ever Hana, and he brought other Arameans, of natural allies. Remember, there was Aram Tzova. There's different portions, areas which correspond with areas in modern Syria, modern Iraq, modern Turkey, that were all the land of Aram, the Arameans, right? So he got some Arameans which were from the other side of the river. Presumably this is the river Euphrates. So from farther away, from farther afield, he brought more Vayavo Chelam, and he brought reinforcements. He brought their armies. Vishovech Sar Tzivah Hadad Ezer Lifneim, and they were being led by Shovach, who was the commander of Hadad Ezer's army. So now you have they're even stronger. So they hadn't destroyed the Ammonites themselves, and the Arameans who had initially fled now have reinforcements coming in. So now the situation is getting worse. It's getting more tight, more scary, more precarious for the people of Israel. So now word goes back by Yugad David, word goes back to David back in Jerusalem, who wasn't here. He was leaving the fight for his generals. And David realized he's going to need to get involved. By Yasoph at Kol Yisrael, before it just says that he gathered his top troops, right? But now he's gathering his entire army. By Yavorat HaYarden, they crossed the Jordan River. By Yavo Chelama, they came to the area of Chelam. Vayarchu Aram Likrat David Vayilachamu Imo. And here we now have a big battle between the Arameans and David. And then David was victorious. Vayonos Aram Ipnei Yisrael. The people of Aram ran from before the Israelites. Vayaharog David me Aram Shva Meot Rechav. And David killed from the people of Aram over 700 riders. Ve'arbaim elef pirashim, and 40,000 Rechav is not riders, is people driving chariots. That's 700 chariot drivers and 40,000 horsemen, cavalry troops. V'et Shovach sar tzva'o hikav vayamasham. And Shovach, the general of the detachment of Arameans that had come all the way from the other side of the Euphrates, he struck him down and he died in that battle. Vayiru kol hamalachim avdei Hadadezer, and all of those who served Hadadezer, who was the leader of the Arameans, they all saw, all of the lower kings, the noblemen saw King Nigvulif Yisrael, that they had been struck down by the people of Israel. Vayashlimu et Yisrael, and they made peace with the people of Israel. Vayavdum, and they became subservient to them. Vayiru haram l'hoshia odet b'nei Ammon, and the Arameans were now afraid to come to the aid of the people of Ammon. Ammon is now isolated without any allies against the people of Israel. Now, again, the war against Ammon isn't over yet, because remember, the Avishai didn't press the attack when the Ammonites retreated into the city. So the Ammonite army is still intact, but they're in a much weaker position now because they lost their Aramean allies. So now, in the next chapter, we're going to see when the people of Israel go and attack Ammon. This concludes chapter 10, and we are now set up. Again, David just led the people to another massive major victory. But we saw also David's initial reliance on his generals to lead the battle, and he came in at the end when he was needed. But in the beginning, he left it to his generals, and he himself stayed in Jerusalem. And that is going to turn out to be a major problem, which we are going to read together when we study chapter 11. Thank you so much for studying chapter 10 together. Looking forward to studying chapter 11 and, of course, the rest of this book of Samuel.